This is also in honor of Leon. We'll discuss a little bit of just grammar issues and what everybody else is reading this week's parsha, because it happens on Monday and Thursday. We read Kitetse. And the first thing is you have the word the snua, which means the wife who's hated. Rabbi Kwawasser at Leva Torah taught us he hates his wife. He really hates her. He's married to her. Who do you hate that you're married to? No, it means the one who's not as loved. That's the way women are. If you don't, if there's someone else, they get super jealous. She might as well feel like she's hated. Okay, so she's the hated wife, or the number two wife, and then it calls her the sneah. So you have this a lot of times in the Chumash. If you're paying attention, these shuruks become hiriks, especially in the which mishkal is it? It's mishkal. What's the mishkal of pa'il? Okay, like the words nasi. Okay, pa'il and pa'ul are both interchangeable. Interchangeable with each other apparently. Using a chirik is a more Aramaic form. Using the shuruk is the more Hebrew form, like we said last time. So you see that in this one pasuk, sinua becomes sniya. And throughout Sefer Bamidbar, we had the word krueh or krieh. One time it's spelled kirueh, and it's pronounced krieh. And one time it's written krieh and pronounced krueh. And sometimes it's just krieh and sometimes it's just krueh. Of course, you have the question of Avram's Eved, asked of Rachel. What do you ask her? Makom lalun, gam lakom lalin. Makom lalun, makom lalin. Apparently, they're grammatically equivalent in Hebrew. Other examples we have of this interchangeability. You have my favorite example, shavuth and shavith. Shavuth, the shoresh is shin bet silent yud, and that's why the noun form ends with a shuruk weak tough. It's like pidut. Pidut is the shoresh is pei dalid silent yud or hey at the end. So the noun form is pidut. You guys can come up with other examples. So shavuth would mean the captivity of something, like the captives. And shavuth is interchangeable with shavit. Shuva Hashem eth shavithenu. It's spelled shavuthenu. And you look in the concordance, I was trying to keep track of how many times you could have this. Thank God they do the work for you. Once you realize, I found 5 times where they're interchangeable. It's written one way and pronounced the other way. They interchange all the time. It's written shavit and pronounced shavuth. It's written shavuth and pronounced shavith. Sometimes it's just shavith, sometimes it's just shavuth. And it's all over the place throughout Tanakh, it's this case. And of course, this gives you sort of a basis for why you'd have regional dialects where perhaps all the time the shuruk is pronounced like a chirik. Which dialect would that be? That's the way the Galicianers were doing. In that part of Europe, which is classically, it was ruled at various times by the Polacks, the Hungarians, the Austro-Hungarians, the Tsars. It's really changed quite a lot of hands. Now, the area that was classically Galicia is in Belarus, is in Ukraine. It's in western Ukraine, but at various times, large parts of the area were even part of what was then Czechoslovakia. You remember Czechoslovakia? Do they still use that nowadays? There's the Czech Republic and there's the Slovakian Republic. They might have broken up before you guys were born even.
But now it's called Czechia.
Czechia. Well, okay, but yeah, that's they pronounce it their native way. In English, you just say Czech Republic. Okay, so it could be after your time. When I was growing up, there was still a place, Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia, for those keeping score at home, little history lesson, was one of those countries created after World War I. National self-determination was created from a large part of was then the sick man of Europe, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So the problem with Czechoslovakia was that the western half was Czech, the eastern half was Slovakian, and the even farther eastern part was sort of Hungarian, Romanian, Ukrainian. And in the West, they had a lot of Germans in the Sudetenland. And that was Hitler's pretext for, he just needed pretexts for all sorts of things. And when the country was reconstituted almost exactly the same after World War II, because it was taken apart by Germany and the Hungarians, the eastern part, which is sort of Ukrainian/Romanian, whatever, was basically annexed to the Ukrainian SSR and is still part of Ukraine today. So in that area, the poor Jews who lived in these places were most of the time Hasidish, and they're the ones who have the most, I would say, remember the mushal about smashing the vase last week? So pieces get scattered. they basically got the fewest pieces of the vase. Whatever piece of the vase, whatever they got, there were few pieces, and whatever pieces they got were small pieces of the pronunciation vase. They have none of the consonants that everybody else that's unique. That is, they only have the consonants that everybody else has. They don't have any consonant. They didn't preserve a single consonant that was preserved that wasn't preserved somewhere else. The Yemenites got a lot of the consonants. They could still pronounce the tet and the daled without a dot, and they got basically none of the consonants that other Ashkenazim didn't get. And they lost a lot of the vowels. Basically, a segol is pronounced like a tzerei, and a tzerei is pronounced like patach yud. A cholam is pronounced like kometz yud. A kometz is pronounced like a shuruk, and a shuruk is pronounced like a hirik. So you have the mnemonics. Remember that all the tenuot gedolot is Eliyahu Tov. Eliyahu Tov. So you have all the tenuot gedolot in that expression, or Eliyahu Kitov, the author of Sefer HaTorah. So they would pronounce Eliyahu Kitov as Iliyui Kitov. The only vowel that remains untouched in that system is the Hirik. So, and then you get this this problem of the who and he being pronounced exactly the same way, and it really creates a lot of confusion. So obviously it's incorrect. Yet there is a lot of basis for doing this type of thing. We see in biblical Hebrew already the Shuruk and Hirik were changing places. The difference is that in the Bible, when the Shuruk becomes a Hirik or vice versa, it does not change the meaning. It's always the Shuruks that don't matter. Okay, so whether it's Krue or Kriye, that's fine. Lalun or Lalin, that's fine. If it's who or he, that's a major difference. Okay, Elahaini sounds kind of funny. When you have a word that ends in the suffix nu, it usually has to do with us. When it ends in ni, what does it usually have to do with? Like me. It's singular suddenly. So that's a problem. So we'll get to it. We'll cut this part out because it's not good to go there. There's something that we have. Well,
we do have he's being spelled as who's.
Yes. Every time he is spelled as who. Good question. Why is it that throughout the Bible, especially at the beginning, okay, the earlier you get, every time it's supposed to be he, it's spelled who? So part of this, I think, just for those keeping score at home also, if you start a little bit of Arabic, one of the biggest surprises I got on day one of Arabic class was that first question I should have asked was, why is it the words he and who are spelled in aleph? Silent aleph at the end. What's going on there? In Arabic, it's exactly the opposite. The word for him, the proper pronoun for him is who. It's spelled in Arabic basically the equivalent of hey and a vav, and it's pronounced huwe. It's pronounced huwe, even though there's no aleph at the end. So we have apparently the fossilized aleph from huwe. We would just pronounce it as who, and the Arabs are still saying huwe, but they drop the aleph. And same thing with he. They say hiya, even though it's just pronounced basically, it's just written hey yud, which is kind of interesting. So the basic idea as to why in the oldest parts of the Bible, the feminine pronoun he is spelled with a vav is because all the letters of the shoresh appear there. That is, the shoresh is hey vav aleph. So it's feminized though, but a lot of times the shoresh has to stay. Okay, you don't just drop away the letters of the shoresh. It's not right sometimes to change a vav to a yud, although it does happen. So that's the basic explanation. It's pronounced he, and all the letters are there because that's part of the shoresh. So that's how they used to write it. And in the olden days, they used to know the difference. Just like if I show you the difference between na'aseh and na'asah. Those are both nifals, right? So one is na'aseh is the present tense, the way it's done, and na'asah is the way it was done. They're spelled exactly the same. But if you get used to the Hebrew, you know it. Also, every time you have any nifal present tense, singular, masculine, it follows that pattern. It's like nishmar or nishmar. One nishmar with a kamatz is present tense, with a patach is past tense, right? But how do you know the difference? So you learn to speak. Eventually, you catch on. Okay. Eventually, you figure it out. So I think that's a good question. I hope that's the answer. I haven't seen any other answer offered. It'd be good. Sometimes you find another answer.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.